All right, so today's project is pickling. I went to the store and grabbed some celery, carrots, and onions that were on special. And they were basically for 2 pound bags, 88 cents. So I said, well, okay, let me buy a few and let me pickle them. So I have about 2 bunches of celery here that I washed and cleaned out. I have about 4 pounds of carrots. These are really, really big carrots. And this is basically 2 bags of 2 pounds each. And the same with the onions, about 4 pounds of onions. And this is what I'm going to pickle today. I mean, of course, you can use any vegetable that you like. You can use pepper, garlic, cauliflower, broccoli, whatever you'd like to pickle, but this is what I have in hand today. I'm also going to use some vinegar that I got at the dollar store, so good deal. $2 for a 4-liter vinegar. I'm probably not going to use the whole thing, but yeah, you'll need vinegar. Some pickling salt. So pickling salt is very different than regular salt, and I'm just going to do a close-up here. So as you can see, it's iodine free, and it's to prevent food discoloration. No additives for clear pickling liquid. So this is the best salt to use for pickling. I mean, this is the particular brand that I got, but there are different kind. I've got some pickling spices here too. Now I buy these in bulk at my local bulk barn, but basically it's pretty much of a mix of mustard seeds, coriander seeds. I think there's cumin seeds in there. There's black peppercorn. What else? There are bay leaves as well. And that's pretty much all it is. So, but I've got some bay leaves on the side here. I'm going to add a little bit more bay leaves because I like the taste of it. And I have a bit more of the red pepper flakes. I do believe there are some red pepper flakes in this pickling mix as well. I also like to have a little bit more spicy, so sometimes I add some of my whole peppers that I dry here. So I may add some of that as well. But again, it's up to you what you would like to add. For people who are pickling like cucumbers and making dill pickles, you can add herbs like fresh dill, for example. But this is what I have in hand today, and this is what I'm going to use for pickling. So let's move on to the equipment that I'm going to use. All right, so I've got these pickling jars, variety of sizes, so you can use any size that you want depending on how much you want to do. Don't quite know exactly how much what I have will amount to. I'm not really good with the measurements and whatnot, but I'll try my best to guide you guys as much as I can as of anyway the measurement of the ingredients. But these, I'm going to wash them thoroughly in hot water and let them dry upside down, and then I'm going to sterilize them. So I'll show you guys all those steps. I've got 1 ladle spoon, so I can spoon in my vinegar, my brine mixture. And then this is the big pot that I'm going to boil my vinegar mixture, brine mixture in. So that's pretty much all you need. For the sterilization of the jars, it's not too complicated. There are a lot of videos on YouTube about that. But the first step is to wash them in hot water and soap thoroughly, and then let them dry upside down, or let the water come out, and then put them in the oven to sterilize. So let's get started with that. So I've washed both the lids and the jars in really hot water and soap, and I'm just letting them drain on a paper towel. You can use a clean tea cloth, but it's important that it's clean and it's not dirty, otherwise you're going to contaminate the jars and the lids. And the whole reason why we not only clean and sterilize the jars is that you don't want any type of bacteria in the jar, because it may make your pickle go bad. So yeah, that's the first part. And now we're going to put them in the oven at 180 degrees to sterilize them properly. So I've preheated my oven at 180 Celsius. So it's important to note that this is in Celsius, so 350 Fahrenheit. So as you can see on the top number is the Fahrenheit and the lower number is the Celsius. So it's 180 Celsius, so roughly about 300 past the 350 Fahrenheit. And then I've got my jars right here, and I've placed them on a metal tray. And this is how they're going to go in the oven. So I've covered my metal tray with a paper foil, but I mean, if you have, you don't need to do that. It's just something that I do. And I'm going to leave it in the oven for about 15 minutes, which should be enough to sterilize the jars and the lids. So I've poured some vinegar in my pot to boil. But my recipe for the brine is half and half, which means I'm not using pure vinegar, but I am doing half vinegar, half water. I never do less than that because then the environment won't be acidic enough to preserve and properly pickle, and your vegetables may go bad. So you have to have a good amount of acidity. So this is the amount of vinegar that I have. I'm going to add that same amount in water, and I'm roughly eyeballing it. I'm not measuring, but if you want to use a measuring cup, then go right ahead and do that. So there I go with the water. And like I said, I'm roughly eyeballing it. I don't want to put too much. It's better to put less because I want my my pickling liquid to be acidic enough. Some people add to that the spices and the salt, but I'm not going to do that. I'm adding it to the jars, and that's just the way I do it. But you can add, you know, your salt and your spices while you're boiling the water vinegar mixture. For me, it's just easier to measure the ratios, and yeah, that's just how I do it. All right, so I've prepped my vegetables, and I pretty much made 3 different kind. So to begin with, I've got these, which are my onions, and I've cut them in big chunks. So I'm going to do 1 jar of only pickled onions. This is a mix of celery, carrots, and onions. So I'm going to do a few jars of those. And these are a different cut. So I'm going to do 1 jar of the celery and 1 jar of the carrots. So it took me roughly about 10 minutes to prep all these. Alright, so now that my jars have been sterilized, I proceeded to put the spices and the salt before I add the vegetables. So right here, these jars are actually 1,500 mils, which is about 50 ounces, which is 1.5 quarts. And these ones are just a little bit less, about 1 quart. And for the larger ones, for each jar, I put 1 bay leaf and 1 red chili. And then for the larger jars, I put a tablespoon of salt and a tablespoon of pickling spice. And for the smaller ones, I put half a tablespoon of salt and half a tablespoon of the pickling spice. So now I'm going to go ahead and pack in the vegetables. Alright, so this is what it looks like. I ended up needing an extra jar because I had a lot of the mixed carrots, onions, and celery. So I made 3 large jars of those, 1 large one of just the onions, and 2 little ones of the celery and the carrots. So I topped them off with some extra bay leaves and extra pickling spice and a little bit of salt that I sprinkled on top, but you really don't need to do that. I just had a little bit of extra and I didn't want to throw it out, so I just kind of sprinkled it on top. And now these are ready for the vinegar. So let's check on our vinegar. Alright, so the vinegar came to a boil, so we're ready now to scoop it in our jars. I may or may not have enough to actually fill all the jars, so I'll do the best I can with what I have. And if I don't have enough, I'll just make more vinegar. There is one little point I want to make about the sterilization of the lids, is that although I put these ones in the oven, what actually happened is that they discolored because they burnt and they weren't able to withstand the high temperature. So the safest thing to do to avoid the mistake that I've made is to boil them in water for 10 minutes. It's been a while I haven't made pickles, and I just remember that that is actually what I used to do. Although I've seen people that were able to sterilize certain type of lids in the oven, the safest thing to avoid doing what I just did is to boil them. Alright, so I put in the boiled vinegar and filled it up enough to cover the vegetables. You don't want it to overflow. But yeah, and you can see immediately that the vegetables are starting to change color. So before putting the lids, what I'm going to do is put some cling film to cover it. Usually I let it cool a little bit, so I let it cool for about 10 minutes. And now I'm going to put the cling film because I don't want the lids to actually rust on the jar. So let me do that. So I've covered each jar with cling film, and now I'm ready to seal them with the lid. Alright, so there you go, guys. I closed the lids, I trimmed the cling wrap, and they are all sealed up. I shaped them up a little bit. Alright, so there it is, folks. I've placed the lids, sealed them on really tightly, and trimmed the cling film. And you can see already that the color of the vegetables are changing. And I gave them a little shake just to make sure that they're sealed properly. And usually you can eat these within a week, but I like to wait longer because the longer you wait, the better they taste. I actually like to wait a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, even longer. And you don't need to refrigerate these. I'm going to keep them out in a dark place and forget about them, and then in 2 or 3 months they should be ready to eat. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, you can be really creative with whatever it is that you use. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below and I'll try to answer as best as I can. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.